Lord knows I am no Clemson fan. I mean, if you've been around here for any amount of time at all, clearly you know that. Clemson has caught a bad rap for last year. All this stuff about can Clemson rebound? Can Clemson come back? Is Clemson's run over? All this kind of stuff. They went 10-3. They went 10-3. It's not like they went 6-6. I mean, think back to some other teams that have had a good year or a string of really good years, and then what has happened to them. Look at Florida State. Florida State would give their left arm to go 10-3. They were winning national titles in 2013, made the playoffs in 2014. I mean, perennially one of the best programs in college football for like 25 years. Now they can't make a bowl game. Florida wins the East, and, they've got more 4-win seasons, Florida does, in the last, 14 years than they do SEC titles. This idea that somehow, because I feel like people talk about, forget the record for a second. When you hear people talk about Clemson last year, doesn't it sound like they were 7-5 or 6-6? They were 10-3. They lost to Georgia in the first game of the season, which, by the way, went on to win the national championship. They lost on the road in 2 overtimes to one of the best NC State teams we've seen in a while, and they lost to Pitt on the road, who, by the way, won the ACC championship. Now, clearly, Clemson's offense was nothing like what we're used to seeing it be under Dabo Swinney for the last 5, 6, 7 years, really going back to Taj Boyd, but specifically, Deshaun Watson and then Trevor Lawrence, each of which won a national title. The ukulele, DJ Uungalele, for those of you that get mad when I call him the ukulele, yeah, I know his name. His name is DJ Uungalele. He didn't have a good year. It surprised me. Chances are it surprised you, whether you're a Clemson fan or someone else. I mean, we got so used to seeing Clemson have elite NFL-level quarterback play that we kind of just assumed whoever the next quarterback in line was going to be at or near that level. Never mind the fact that we saw the ukulele start 2 games the season before and throw for like 800 yards total between those 2 games. There really was no reason to expect or see the crash coming for Clemson's offense this last season. I know their offensive line was bad, and I know the ukulele didn't play very well. And, of course, they were decimated with injuries, particularly on offense, but even some on defense too. But Clemson had one of the best defenses in all of college football last year, top 5 in almost every single category. And breaking news, their defense is going to be even better in 2022. Clemson's got the best defensive line in college football, period, bar none. Forget Georgia, Alabama, whatever other team you want to throw in there that you might think has the best defensive line in all of college football. You're wrong. It's going to be Clemson. Now, can the offense take enough steps forward in 2022 to get Clemson back to where they're used to being, which is winning ACC titles and making the playoffs? We're going to try to find out in today's video. We're going to look at the schedule for Clemson coming up in 2022. Let's put it up on the screen now. By the way, Clemson's spring game is today. I'm recording this Saturday morning, April 9th. And Clemson's spring game is today at 2 in the afternoon. I'm going to be live streaming this afternoon on this channel. I'm going to start around 1 o'clock. The Nebraska spring game comes on at 1. The Clemson spring game comes on at 2. I live in Augusta, Georgia, by the way, and of course the Masters golf tournament is also on today. So I'm going to start live streaming around 1 o'clock this afternoon and stream at least through the Clemson game. I'll have the Nebraska game on, the Clemson game on. We'll be keeping up with the Masters, all that stuff. So if you want to come hang out this afternoon, Saturday, April 9th, about 1 o'clock right here on a live stream, I'd love to see you there. But here's Clemson's schedule for 2022. Now, this is not a prediction video. I do prediction videos starting in June where I do about this same thing. I put the schedule up on the screen, and I tell you what I think Clemson's record is going to be, who they're going to beat, and who they're going to lose to. I do that in June for a bunch of teams. This time of year, I like to just get an early look at some of these teams' schedules, kind of compare it to the previous years. Is it harder than last year's schedule? Does the non-con, how does the non-con differ from last year? What about the conference games? Which tough conference games are on the road? Which ones do you maybe catch a break and get them at home? Where's the bye week? Is there a trap game? Where are the rivalry games? Do you have a stretch of games, 2, 3, 4 games in a row that might be kind of difficult? That's kind of the point of this video. Of course, spring game, like I mentioned, comes up today. I'm not going to talk about that here, but regular season kicks off for Clemson on Monday night. What a shame this is, by the way. Remember when they used to give us good games on that Monday night? College football week 1 always starts on Labor Day weekend. And we've got games all weekend long. You got games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And it used to be the Monday night game. They'd give us something good, but no, not this year. Clemson on the road at Georgia Tech. And for absolutely no reason at all, they're playing this game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is the Atlanta Falcons NFL stadium, instead of playing it 5 minutes away at Georgia Tech Stadium. Now, Georgia Tech Stadium is an absolute disaster and a joke. It's by far the worst college football stadium I've ever been to, and one of the worst in America. It is the oldest in America, and you can tell if you ever go there. It's an absolute pitiful stadium. So I guess if I was going to this game, I would be glad it was at Mercedes-Benz. But, of course, I do think college football games should be played on college campuses, but I've talked about that enough. Georgia Tech is horrible. They've been horrible every year under Jeff Collins. What little bit of talent they had on their roster transferred out, including who I think is their best player, running back Jahmyr Gibbs, who's now at Alabama. Georgia Tech's going to be terrible again in 2022. This will most likely be Jeff Collins' last year as head coach at Georgia Tech. I think they probably should have fired him after last year, but they're bringing him back, giving him one more chance. He's made a bunch of staffing changes. It's not going to matter. Clemson's going to be a huge favorite in this game. And you know what Clemson's offense needs, in my opinion, almost more than anything else? Confidence, especially after the year they had last year. There's not a better team, I don't think, to draw week 1 to help your offense gain confidence than Georgia Tech. Clemson should be able to put up a boatload of points in this game and win fairly easily. I would assume they'll be a huge favorite. This is a much better draw than last year when they had to open up with Georgia. And I've been joking with Clemson fans, but it's not really a joke. I told Clemson fans, you better win the national title this season in 2022 because you opened up with Georgia last year and they stole your hopes and dreams and your season was over after week 1. Well, guess who Clemson opens up with next year in 2023? That's right, Georgia again, which they're not going to beat. Clemson's 18-43 all time against Georgia. Just absolutely pitiful. So you better get it going good this year because next year you're going to be back to, not making the playoffs because Georgia's going to put you out of your misery early in the season again. But you'll be a huge favorite week 1 this year against our little brother, the Nerds, over at Georgia Tech. And then you get a couple of non-con games. Both of these are at home, Furman and Louisiana Tech. So non-con schedule, much easier than last season. No major second non-con Power 5. Of course, you do play South Carolina at the end of every season, but last year you had South Carolina and Georgia. This year you draw Furman and Louisiana Tech. Now, you do get Notre Dame. Anyway, we'll just go through the schedule here. You'll be huge favorites again at home in week 2 and 3. You should be 3-0, no problem at all. Now, there's been a lot of discussion this offseason about the quarterback situation at Clemson, right? Is the job definitely the ukuleles? Is it the ukuleles unless he plays bad? Or are we going to see something similar to what we saw back in 2018, Trevor Lawrence's freshman season, right? They had Kelly Bryant, Clemson did. They had Kelly Bryant coming back as quarterback in 2018. He had started in 2017 and led Clemson to the playoffs, although he did not perform well, particularly in the first round of the playoffs where Clemson took a beating. In 2018, Trevor Lawrence, true freshman, enrolled, and there was sort of an open competition during spring, fall, and summer camp and all that. And when Clemson got ready to start the season in week 1, they pretty much rotated QBs the first 4 games of the season. Kelly Bryant would get the start, but Trevor Lawrence would come in almost every single quarter. He played significant, meaningful snaps in all 4 of Clemson's first games that year in 2018. And after week 4, Dabo Swinney made the announcement that he was switching to Trevor Lawrence as quarterback. So we know that Dabo Swinney is not afraid to change quarterbacks, even if he has a returning starter and the backup is a freshman. Well, Clemson finds themselves in a similar situation this season, of course, with Cole Klubnik, a highly rated quarterback that they've got. A lot of the fans are sort of fed up with the ukulele after last year. Now, reading some stuff this morning and over the last week or so about Clemson spring practice, it looks as though the ukulele is getting most of the first-team reps in spring. Dabo has had nothing but good things to say about the ukulele. Also about Cole Klubnik as well, though. Now, I would not be shocked to see Dabo Swinney go to some sort of rotation similar to what he did in 2018 with Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant. The difference being, I think Clemson has to get this figured out after week 3 in 2022 instead of the additional 4th week that he had in 2018, because September 24th, week 4, Clemson goes on the road to play Wake Forest. Now, Clemson handled Wake Forest last year, but, Wake Forest is going to have a really, really good offense again this year. It's on the road, whereas they had them at home last year. This isn't Clemson's toughest game of the year, but this is a tricky game. I mean, Wake Forest, if their offense gets rolling, can score points, and if Clemson hasn't figured out who their quarterback is, or if they're having issues at the quarterback position heading into this game, it's potentially a spot where Clemson could slip up. Now, I think Clemson will be favored. I think they're the better team. And like I said, I don't have any questions at all about Clemson's defense. But just my theory on Clemson's quarterback situation, whichever way they decide to go, whether it's to Ukulele or the incoming freshman, Cole Klubnik, I think the decision needs to be made by the time you go on the road in week 4 and play at Wake Forest. The following week, you get a home game against NC State. NC State is going to be one of the best teams in the ACC again this year. That was the case last year. They've got a ton of talent returning. And look, Clemson and NC State do not like each other at all. Their head coaches don't like each other. The players don't like each other. The fans don't like each other. This has sort of become a little bit of a nasty rivalry over the last few years. This is going to be an interesting game. Clemson gets them at home, which is obviously is a benefit. And again, I think Clemson will likely be favored, but this is not a gimme. I mean, this is a revenge game for Clemson. You lost this game last year. This is a very interesting game. Really an interesting 2-game stretch here at Wake Forest and home against NC State. Then you go on the road and play a Boston College team that you should be able to overwhelm. Talent-wise, they're nowhere close to what Clemson is. It is on the road, but again, I would expect Clemson to be a significant favorite in that game. Also an interesting game at Florida State. And now here you have back-to-back road games. Now Clemson is better than Boston College and they're better than Florida State. There's no doubt about it, but there's a reason why teams like to play at home. Home field advantage is real, particularly in college football. And you do see teams struggle or slip up occasionally when they have to play multiple games in a row on the road, whether it's back-to-back or 3 games in a row or whatever it is. So travel way up north to Boston College to take on the Eagles on October 8th, and then way down south to Tallahassee to take on Florida State and the Seminoles the following week. Florida State's an interesting team. Mike Norvell, I think, has got to start winning some games there. Now, they were okay last year, and they sort of, I don't want to say they got lucky, but they did get a win over Miami late in the year, which was a big boost for Florida State. Miami won 5 of their last 6 games last year. The only game they lost was to Florida State, so that was a big win for Florida State. But they need to get something going there. Again, even though both those games are on the road, Boston College and Florida State, I would assume Clemson is favored. They're more talented than both of those teams. You come back home and play Syracuse, another coach like Jeff Collins who could find himself out of a job after this season. One of, if not the worst teams in the ACC, the Syracuse Orange. Then you have your bye week. Bye week, in my opinion, comes at a really good time. You're playing, 7-8 games there. Bye week at the end of October, an extra week to rest before the final month of the season, and before what is probably your most difficult game of the season, on the road at Notre Dame. And, let's not forget, you lost to Notre Dame 2 years ago when you played them on the road there. Now you got revenge in the ACC title game. That was the COVID year, the only year where Notre Dame was actually in the ACC. They played in the regular season in Notre Dame. Notre Dame won. That was a game, by the way, that the Ukulele played in. So this will be the Ukulele's second start on the road at Notre Dame, right? Clemson's going to win that game. Clemson needs to win that game. We'll see. A lot of people have Notre Dame in their preseason top 10. Notre Dame's got a brand-new coach who's never been a head coach before. Now he's familiar with Notre Dame because he was an assistant under Brian Kelly there for a long time. But he's never been the head coach before. So, now when this game is played, he will been... he'll have 8 games under his belt as a head coach, but interesting to see what Notre Dame does this year with first year head coach. Not an easy task on the road in South Bend. Does come after a bye week, which, like I said, I think that's great. You get 2 weeks, so not only do you get to rest up, maybe get a player or two back that might have been banged up earlier in the season. But, of course, you also get 2 weeks to prepare for what I think is probably the most difficult game on your schedule. You need to come back home and play a Louisville team that's been circling the drain for really since Lamar Jackson left. Clemson to be a significant favorite there. And then the Miami game. Now, this game is interesting. Now, I know Clemson probably doesn't look at this game. Well, I'll just ask you, the Clemson fans that are watching, where do you rank this Miami game in terms of games you're excited about this season? Where do you rank it? Miami fans have this game circled, is my point. And, maybe the team does as well. Another team you're catching here with a first-year head coach. Now, he's been a head coach before, of course, at Oregon, but Miami brought in Mario Cristobal, replacing Manny Diaz this offseason. And not just Manny Diaz, or not just Mario Cristobal, but a great staff down there, too. Now, Miami, talent-wise, in 2022 is about the same as they were in 2021. I mean, yes, they signed a freshman class and they brought in some transfers, but you only improve your talent so much in 1 year. However, over the next 2 to 3 years, I think Miami's talent is going to significantly increase. I can tell you right now, Miami fans want to win their division, and they want to play in the ACC championship game, and of course win it. Some of the more reasonable Miami fans that I've talked to expect to lose this game, mainly because it's at Clemson, but they think they could beat you in the ACC title game maybe. So anyway, point is, I don't know where Clemson fans rank this game in terms of importance on their schedule, but the Miami fans and probably the Miami team have this game circled. It would be a huge benefit to Mario Cristobal year one to get a huge win like this on the road at Clemson. I think Clemson will be favored. It's a home game, and that's clearly a benefit, so we'll see. And then, of course, you close out your regular season the same way you do every single year against in-state rival South Carolina. It's in Clemson this year, so a home game for the Gators, which is good news. South Carolina, look, no love lost here between these two teams. I get it, and Clemson beat the absolute bejesus out of the Gamecocks last year in Shane Beamer's first year as head coach there. But South Carolina exceeded expectations last year. A lot of people had South Carolina going 3-9, 4-8 last year. They exceeded that by several games. And they've done pretty well in the transfer portal in the offseason. I mean, they brought in Spencer Rattler and that tight end from Oklahoma, a few other pieces as well. Now, clearly the talent level at South Carolina is not where it is at Clemson. And I would be surprised if South Carolina won the game. But I do think South Carolina will be a better team in 2022 than they were in 2021. I mean, you got to remember, they won, how many games did they win last year? 6 or 7, whatever it was. And that was with basically the worst quarterback situation in the Power 5. I mean, a couple of weeks before the season started, they lose their starting quarterback. They basically made a guy a football player that wasn't even a football player at the time. I mean, he was like he was a grad assistant or something, but he had a year of eligibility left. So when the quarterback got hurt, they begged him to play, and he said, okay. And then, he wasn't very good. And then they played 2 or 3 different quarterbacks over the course of the year. I mean, it was just the quarterback situation was a complete mess. So now people point at Spencer Rattler and say, well, he wasn't very good at Oklahoma. Well, he wasn't very good maybe compared to his backup, which is Caleb Williams, one of the best 4 or 5 quarterbacks in all of college football. He will be the best quarterback at South Carolina. There's no question or doubt about that. He rubbed some people the wrong way, Spencer Rattler, with some of his personality issues going all the way back to his time on that TV show QB1 or whatever it was. But there's no denying the fact that Spencer Rattler is one of the most talented players South Carolina has ever had, regardless of position, period. I mean, he's, Jadeveon Clowney, Marcus Lattimore. I mean, you know this if you're a Clemson fan, but it's not like South Carolina's loading up with 4- and 5-star players every single year. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So Spencer Rattler, whatever you think about him, is a huge upgrade over whatever they had at quarterback last year. Now, they've got a lot of issues outside of that. It's not like quarterback was their only issue. I do think they've got a pretty good defense, particularly a defensive front. But, they need some playmakers on the outside. They need, consistent play from the running back. The offensive line's got to protect Spencer Rattler. So we'll see. But my point is, I know you hate South Carolina and you want them to go 0-12 every year, and I get that. But I do think they're probably an improved team in 2022, versus what they were in 2021. But again, it's not like you beat them by 3 points last year. You absolutely destroyed them. You get this game at home. You'll be a significant favorite again in this game. But you know what they say about rivalry games? Anything can happen. But it seems like it's been forever since South Carolina has won this game. And then, of course, the ACC championship game on Saturday, December 3rd, which Clemson missed out on last year for the first time in, 6 years? So Clemson looking to make a return trip to Charlotte this year to compete for the ACC title and potentially a playoff spot. Let me know down below, what do you think Clemson's going to do this year? Do you think last year was just an anomaly, a blip on the radar, or do you think Clemson is headed the wrong direction? There's a ton of talent on Clemson's team. I'll tell you right now, and this is no secret. Again, if you've been watching me, you already know this. If I'm a Clemson fan, my concern about Clemson is not necessarily this year. It's moving forward. A lot has changed in college football, and I'm not saying Dabo Swinney is right or wrong in how he feels, but he's not a fan of all of these changes in college football. He hasn't fully embraced the NIL stuff. He's blatantly against the transfer portal. They've only ever brought in one transfer, and that was Hunter Johnson this year, who was at Clemson to start with a few years ago before transferring out to Northwestern. They brought him back as a grad transfer this year. And I saw a quote from Dabo the other day that said, after spring practice, they're going to look to get one offensive lineman out of the transfer portal. But then he went on to say, I'm not going to be using the transfer portal very often. I'm just not going to do it. If we have somebody leave or get hurt or whatever the case, I'm going to promote the next man in line that chose to commit with Clemson in the first place. And look, I get it. Everybody loves loyalty, and I understand that. But this sort of philosophy that he has where, once you commit to Clemson, that's it. I don't want you talking to any other schools. I don't want you visiting any other schools. If you come here, I don't want you transferring out. And as far as players from other places that are transferring, we don't want you. We want the players that chose Clemson from day one. I get that. That's what every coach wants. But that's not the reality we're living in the college football world right now. And there's an old saying, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. I feel like college football might be passing Dabo Swinney by. You can love the old days all you want. You can't act like it still is the old days, though. And that would be my concern about Clemson going forward. Players and recruits have more power now than they've ever had before. And I don't know how many recruits are going to want to be told, look, if you commit to Clemson in June, you can't take any visits or talk to any coaches from any other schools anywhere else until you sign in December, or we're yanking your scholarship offer away. I just don't know going forward if players are going to be willing to hear that, when there's not very many other schools that are telling players that. Most coaches understand that a commitment doesn't really mean anything. The only thing that really means anything is when they sign, either in December or February. Getting a player to commit in June or July, that's great, but there's nothing binding about a commitment in June, July, August, September, October, or November. They can commit today, decommit tomorrow. And so that would be my concern if I was a Clemson fan. But I think Clemson will have another good year. And yes, 10-3 is a good year. Like I said at the beginning, people talk about Clemson like they went 6-6. They were 10-3. Hey, Clemson was so good they made it to the CHEEZIT Bowl. Okay, let's not forget. Let's not forget. Anyway, let me know down below what you think Clemson's record will be in 2022. And if you have them losing any games, tell me which games you think they lose. Appreciate you watching, and have a good morning.